roughly 6 weeks or so. And then our installer committee also had well, it took most of the day where we selected the installers, both Catamount and Integrity, who you're going to hear from in a little while. So a lot of time has already gone into this initiative, and this initiative is going to be lasting basically all summer. For the next 10 weeks or so, residents of both Chelsea and Tunbridge will have a chance to sign up, not necessarily make a financial commitment, but sign up an interest level or for a site visit with Catamount or Integrity, and have a representative from one of those companies come to your residence or to your small business or to your small nonprofit and check it out, look at your electric bills, ask where you want it sited, answer a lot of questions, and give you a quote. And just on that thread, one of the beauties about this program, and I'm sure you'll get a little bit more background, this Solarize the Upper Valley program, which has been going on, I think, for about 2 years now. This is the third round of the program. This is the final round. At least right now, Vital Communities is not planning on presenting a fourth round. So we feel very fortunate to slip in. There were some other candidates who didn't make it, but 2 other groups of towns are also participating in this third round. There's a very good track record. One of the things that was going to go in our early publicity about Solarize Chelsea Tunbridge, I saw the verbiage and I said, well, that's a little bit confusing, but I could understand why it was on there. It was a phrase that was going to say neighbors helping neighbors. Well, here in Tunbridge, we actually have an organization that does that, which is great, and this is going to be sort of a renewable part of that. But one of the beauties of the Solarize Upper Valley plan is that a lot of the education that goes on is going to come from the experts, from the installers, people like Sarah, people like those that are on the core committee. And those people that I just identified that are on the core committee, please feel free to ask them questions, not only today, but in the coming weeks, because a lot of us have a pretty good idea of some of the answers to your questions, or can certainly relay you and get you answers to those questions. But is the more people that sign up and actually get committed to a contract, it drives the price down for everybody. There'll be a little more technical discussion of the tiered pricing structure as we go throughout the presentation. But it's kind of unique, and it's kind of, I think it dovetails well with the Vermont ethos. Pretty independent group of folks have been living up here for a few centuries. Very resilient, people that know how to take care of themselves, but people that also keep an eye out for their neighbors. And what better way to become more independent in sourcing your energy and being very aware of climate change and trying to do something personally to take care of that, but also to be able to help your neighbors who, as that price comes down, might be able to afford putting up rooftop or pole mount solar that they wouldn't have been able to do if they just called the installer directly and said, look, I'm just all on my own, come out here and give me a quote. So there really are some price savings involved with this initiative. I've known about this kind of from the beginning, and Sarah, who you're going to hear from in a moment, she has been on our radio show. Henry and I produce a show on Thursdays. It's called Green Zine, and Sarah's been a guest a couple of times on that. So we've been sussing that out pretty carefully, and I've talked to some people in Randolph, Braintree, and Brookfield who participated in phase 2 of this program, and they're very happy with the response that they've had. To go back to the installation team, I was part of that, and Aaron was, and Philip Mulligan, and we heard from 3 installers, and they were all very impressive. One is a nationwide concern that's been in business for, I think, more than 20 years. Another is a startup that just got going last year. They've done 7 installations. We really liked what they were doing. And then the group that we decided on for various reasons, Catamount and Integrity, have also got a wealth of experience, particularly among their core partners. And I think at least 2 of those partners are here, and then also 2 of the partners from Integrity are here. There really wasn't that big a difference in cost proposals that were put out there, but we really felt that being close in proximity, knowing the work that Catamount and Integrity have done in the earlier Solarize programs, and also knowing that if Dan Kinney screws up, I know where he lives. okay? So, you know, we can go down and pay a personal visit, but that's not going to happen. Anyway, we're glad to have them on board. There are handouts on all your chairs. Make sure you get those. If you're interested in a site visit, make sure you fill that out and leave it in a basket that's in the back so we can have that information. Catamount and Integrity can have that information. They will be getting anyone that either today or in the coming weeks would like a site visit. They're going to get back to you pretty quick. I have been in their front office of Catamount in Randolph. Very organized there. Great administrative staff there. If you get in touch with them, they will be getting back in touch with you very soon and come out and answer your additional questions during the site visit. Keep in mind energy efficiency. If you decide you think you want to get a site visit, you should always be looking at, regardless of going solar or not, how can I save electricity? We all know about turning off the TV and turning off the lights when you go from room to room. The dreaded phantom power. We're all subject to phantom power, things that draw power unnecessarily. Things to educate yourself in your own use of electricity in your own house. It's nice if you happen to get solar to occasionally go out and sort of in your head say, hey, I'm spinning the meter backwards. I'm producing more energy than I use. If you need to ask questions about what it means to be grid tied, cost questions, whatever question you may come up with, this is an ideal time when Catamount and Integrity are here to ask those questions. There are cost adders that you should be aware of. I think there's a sheet on the table that tells you about those. There's financial information currently as far as lowest interest rate. The Vermont State Employees Credit Union is offering a special green sort of loan for this type of project. You can get very favorable interest rates. I think Northfield has something similar, so you can get caught up on that. And I think that just about takes care of things. And, you know, the other outgrowth that I hope comes from this initiative, there are going to be people here today and people that are very interested. I've already talked to several people who couldn't make it today or were planning on site visits that may find that they do not have an ideal site for solar. They're just not faced the right way, there's too many trees, etc. That doesn't mean that they won't be able to go solar. There are definitely possibilities of group net metering, in other words, another site that would be outside of this program, but just by educating ourselves and our neighbors, we will discover who can possibly do their own solar at their own property and those who might in a future project participate in group net metering. There's all kinds of educational possibilities that are going to come out of that. We had a little bit of education here about 4 years ago. Folks from Tunbridge might remember the time that the town almost went solar. If I had to estimate the cost factor from that time, which I think was 4 years ago, to now, if the town had decided at that point, and this is to get back to payback times on where electricity rates, the town would be approximately about 2 years away from having paid for that entire 150 kilowatt array that would be powering the four buildings, the four main buildings that make up the municipality of Tunbridge. So there are very favorable things that can come out of this summer's initiative. Someone who's been involved from the very beginning, from phase 1 right up until phase 3, she has given us an amazing education. Let's hear a few remarks from Vital Communities' Sarah Simmons.
Thank you, Todd. So my name is Sarah Simons. It's not Simmons, it's okay, Todd. Anyway, I run the energy program at Vital Communities. And just for context, show of hands, who has heard of Vital Communities? Hey, great, okay. Well, then I'll keep my spiel brief. We are a nonprofit and we have an office in White River Junction, but we actually serve the whole 69-town region of the Upper Valley, including, of course, Chelsea and Tunbridge. And we have programs that really run the gamut in terms of topic, and that's because we tend to take on issues where a regional approach and an independent voice are essential. Things like Solarize, for example. But we also have a Valley Food and Farm program, Valley Quest, the Transportation Management Association, Local First Alliance. I could go on, but I won't. So you should find me afterwards if you have questions about what else we do when we are not here launching Solarize. Excuse me. So we actually got involved in this 2 years ago, as Todd mentioned, and this is not anything new. There have actually been Solarize programs across the country, but we were one of the first to make it work in a more rural setting. So we launched the first round in 2014 with 10 towns, and then we had another, or with 5 towns, and we had another round this past winter with another 9 or 10 towns. I think it's been 15 total so far, and there have been over 300 people who have gone solar through the program, and by the end of this summer we expect there'll be a total of 400 to 450, which, by the way, will double the number of solar homes in the entire Upper Valley in just 2 years. So you're a part of that. That's a really, really big goal. And in Chelsea and Tunbridge, as you'll see as your solar installers explain, that's going to mean somewhere we expect maybe in the 20-25 new solar homes. That would be really exciting, and that would get you to the lowest tier pricing. But I get ahead of myself. The basic Solarize model, which we'll hope for you to understand this if I explain, that it's basically just volunteers plus an installer plus 15 weeks and a deadline. So what I mean by that, and this is common across the country, we get a team of volunteers together who are interested in spreading the word about solar. In this case, you happen to have 2 great energy committees that are teaming up in Tunbridge and Chelsea. And Vital Communities, or someone like us, helps them go through a competitive process to select a partner installer. And as Todd mentioned, there was an interview process and a bid process, and they ended up selecting the 2 installers that you'll meet today. And part of the deal is that those installers bring a special tiered pricing structure. It's all very transparent. You'll find it on your handouts. It's also available on the website. And it's already discounted below what you would normally see from these installers if you just went to them on your own. But the benefit is, in addition to that, the price actually keeps going down as more of you sign up to go solar. And you have to do that by September 30th, and that's very important to keep in mind. So you sign a contract with the partners by September 30th, and you get to be part of this group buy package. And of course, you don't have to work with these partner installers. As long as you go solar, we don't really care how you do it. We do have resources about other installers and other ways to go about this too. So I think with that, I will hand it back to Todd, and we'll get on with this.
All right, thank you very much, Sarah Simons. You know, I was going to ask somebody in her office, because she's never corrected me before, but maybe because I haven't said her last name out loud before. But anyway, yeah, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are today in this initiative without her help, so I certainly want to thank her. And I want to thank a couple of other folks. You know, some of you may be looking into getting a plug-in electric car, and we have a couple of those cars here today outside. On your way out the door later after ice cream, you should check them out. I want to thank Linda Gray for bringing her Mitsubishi, the small white one, out there, as well as a Nissan Leaf is here from Kathy Kramer. So take a little car visit. In fact, I think Kathy Kramer even threatened to give a ride to someone as long as they didn't go up like Dickerman Hill to the brewery up there or anything. I see that shirt over there. Anyway, I'm not sure how the Leaf would do on the muddy Dickerman Hill Road, but up and down 110. Anyway, check those out, and that may be a question you want to ask the installers. Maybe you're thinking, as you get closer to the site visit and installing panels, hey, what additional panel would I have to install to power my own car from my own solar power source? Be pretty interesting. Well, as Sarah said, yeah? Oh, okay, yeah, they're right here, the drivers of those cars. Yep, just look for those. Yeah. 2 ladies. Hey, I brought this prop down, or at least my partner did. You know, we want to thank this guy. You know, we couldn't do it without the sun. Sun's not really happening today. And I asked this question earlier before I bring up the installers. Who can name the best solar gain day coming up this week? You have 5 seconds. 5, 4. Ah, who said Thursday? Oh, yeah, you too are a winner. Okay, Thursday is the next sunny day. But even on a day like today, there's still a little bit of gain going on, but that is the next really sunny day. We're going to have lots of solar gain days. These guys have been gaining quite a bit, both Catamount and Integrity. Dan and Kevin are here. Amos and John and Dave from Integrity over in East Bethel are here. So I'm going to turn the microphone over. They're going to give you a little more background, and then we're going to open up the floor to question and answers here. Guys, why don't you come on forward and take over the microphone.
Well, thank you for coming out on our drizzly Sunday morning. And thank you to the Energy Committee and the wonderful breakfast that I just had. That was great. I'm Dan Kinney. I am one of the founders of Catamount Solar, here with Amos Post, who is the founder of Integrity Energy. Full disclosure, we are family. He's my nephew. So sometimes I'm referred to as Uncle Dan in these things. Catamount and Integrity are really excited to be doing a third round of Solarize together. And we're really honored that the energy committees have chosen us as the installer of choice. It's great to be working local, to be in our own neighborhoods, to be keeping the money in Vermont, to be buying our products from Vermont vendors. So by choosing us, I feel that the energy committees have chosen wisely, and we're honored to have that opportunity to bring you the products that we bring. So we're going to just go through quickly some slides, and then we'll bring up some questions. So again, who we are, 2 companies. None of us have been doing this for 50 years consecutively, but combined we have many years in the industry. Again, when you deal with us, you're dealing with one company. We'll do the intake, and then once the site visit gets scheduled, one of the companies will go there and work a contract with you. But it's the same numbers, totally transparent, I think is the word that Sarah used. NABCEP certified installers in each company. That's a National American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. Meaning we know what we're doing. And we do everything to code, which is a big thing. Unfortunately, in Vermont, what we do doesn't get inspected by the state because of the way the laws are, but that doesn't mean that you should cut corners and not do things to the current codes. So all of our work is done to code both companies. And we've done a bunch of installations just in the last couple of years. So we've seen it all. What I like to tell people is when you put a solar system on your home, a PV, when you hear the word PV or the initials, that's photovoltaics, solar electric systems. But when you do a grid-tied solar electric or PV system on your home, you are pre-buying your power for the next 30 plus years. It's kind of like locking in your oil rates, only you're locking in your electric rates, and instead of having to gamble every year and decide if the oil rate's going to go down, you're locking them in for the next 30 years. Net metering, group net metering, I heard Todd mentioning those. What does that mean? Quickly, net metering means that you can produce power, put it back on the grid, and get a credit for the power that you produce. We have a little difference in Tunbridge and Chelsea because we have 2 different utilities. Washington Electric has a little different tariff than Green Mountain Power. So people will, we'll have to speak specifically with Washington Electric people about how that works versus Green Mountain Power. Either way, it's still a good investment. Solar is definitely mainstream, and we think you can still significantly cut your electric rates no matter what utility you're in. And some tax credit for business. The federal tax credit is 30%. I don't know if the next slide goes for that, maybe. No. The federal tax credit is 30% of the cost of the installed system. And you can carry that tax credit if you buy a system this year and you don't have enough tax appetite for the amount of the credit, you can carry it to next year. As it stands now, I'm not sure you can do that if you have a system installed in 16. Any rulings? Kevin, I'm looking at you. Unfortunately, some of this we rely on Congress. So, as of now, you cannot carry it past 2016.
So how does it work, right? Sorry, that already came out. So what's involved with this? So we have photovoltaic panels, which are like those over there, or some little tiny ones in the back. Those go on a rooftop or on the ground, preferably facing south or somewhere close to south, as close as possible. They sit in front of the sun, and they're called photovoltaic because what happens is when the sun comes out and there's light energy in the sun, there's electrons in those panels that start to become energized and look for somewhere to go. They're looking for work to do when the sunlight hits them. So there's some different parts and pieces of the system involved. You have the actual panels on the roof, then you have, or on the ground, then you have a racking, then you have wiring, right, that's going to carry that electricity, somewhere. That carries it to an inverter, because the electricity that's being produced is being produced as DC electricity, just like a car battery. And that has to hit an inverter to be inverted from DC over to AC, which is what all of our houses use for our standard appliances, our lights, our everything that runs in our house is on AC. So this is just a quick pictorial of how the nitty-gritty works. You have the panels and the inverter and the meter outside your house, and showing the utility lines there. So real quickly, a solar electric system size is measured in kilowatts DC. A typical size of a system is 5 to 6 kilowatts, and that's approximately 20 to 24 of those panels is an average size. So, we're talking a fair amount of area for a system. So a system's production, what it produces, is actually measured in kilowatt hours. So there's the time reference there. And in our region, a 6 kW system produces up to 7,200 kilowatt hours per year. Now that's ideal conditions, facing south, no shading, things like that. So our solar site evaluation. So if you were to sign up for a site visit, we're going to come out to your site with either something like this or an electronic version of this. This is called a Solar Pathfinder. And what we're looking for is the solar exposure of your site. So either your rooftop or where a ground-mounted solar array might go. We need to find out, okay, how much solar exposure is there? How many trees are there shading the roof or the site? Are there other objects, buildings, and stuff like that are causing some obstruction? So we need to look at all that to come up with some realistic numbers and accurate numbers for you.
This is where I said I might butt in.
Yeah, okay,
So we do offer this free solar site assessment. Before we come to you, we're going to look at it on Google Earth so that we can say on the phone, so it's the house that looks like it's got a brown roof, that's got a pond in front of it, make sure we're looking at the right place. And then we can say, well, it looks like you've got a great site, or are you willing to cut down all those trees that are in front of the building? Again, we want to, our goal is to get this price is good for everyone, but we also don't want to be talking to people about sites that really aren't good sites. And not to be blunt, but to be blunt, we don't want to waste our time coming to a site that we have determined is really not a good solar access. So the first part of the site visit will be a phone call back to schedule that.
well said. So just some visuals of the different types of systems, and you can see more of these in the back afterwards if you're interested on the bulletin board there. But this is a roof-mounted system. It's the most economical type of system, and it has the least visual impact. You can see it kind of blends right in to the roofing there. You've got the panels up at the top of that garage roof. ground-mounted system. This is where we actually have posts that go into the ground, and then we have racking and panels that mount on top of those posts. It's a fixed array, so it does not follow the sun. It doesn't adjust. You can't adjust the angle, but it's an economical ground solution, and requires a little bit extra east to west area. And the other type of ground-mounted option that we do offer is a pole-mounted system. This system here is three. Maybe there's 4 cows there. 3 or 4 cows, and you have 3 pole mounts in the back. Oh, the cows don't, yeah. We missed that disclaimer in this slide here, Dan. So these pole mounts here, you can see they're quite a bit taller than the last ground mount. But they are seasonally adjustable. So if you are concerned about getting just the absolute maximum out of your array, and you want to adjust for the season, this is a manually adjustable system. It does cost a little more because the racks are a little more expensive, and you end up with a little more concrete for something like this. Okay, pricing. So, standard pricing. This is standard pricing for systems that are 4 kilowatts to 6.5 kilowatts, and we see this type of system as an average, all right? So you can see across the top here, I don't have a pointer, but you've got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, and what those are different capacity brackets. So tier 1, 0 through 20, 20 through 50, and all the way up through tier 5, which is greater than 150 kilowatts. And again, what that is as people sign on and contract with us to do these systems in the towns of Chelsea and Tunbridge, we're going to be counting the cumulative kW capacity of all those systems. So as we reach tier 2 and tier 3 and tier 4 all the way up to tier 5, the pricing, as you can see, the purchase price will go down as we get more people signed on. Yeah, that pretty much covers that slide. Here are some adders. This isn't actually a complete list of adders, but it's a list of some of the adders you might see or subtractors, to be honest, things that will affect the price of that system. If the size is outside of that range of 4 to 6.5 kilowatts, if it's below 4 kilowatts, there's going to be an increase in price per watt, because there's a certain amount of just time and energy and things that we have to do to get a truck on site, to set up. We're doing one array. We're setting up ladders. We're setting up. We're still doing one wire run. So smaller systems actually cost us a little bit more per watt to build. And on the other end of that, larger systems, there's some economy of scale there. So if we get to systems above 6.5 kilowatts, or there's another break above 10 kilowatts, that does decrease the price of the system. And then towards the bottom, you can see we've got adders for the ground-mounted systems, the top-of-pole-mounted systems if you have a finished attic or basement, steep roofs, high roofs, things like that are going to increase our installation costs. We do have to add for those types of things. And again, we will definitely go into this in more detail with you and show you the breakdown of all these things when we do a site visit with you. Quality components. So here's some names here of all of the inverter manufacturers that we use, solar panel manufacturers that we use, and the racking manufacturers that we use. These are all top level, very good quality businesses and companies that have been in the industry for a long time, and we feel very good about using their products and standing behind their products. Incentives are, again, this is a little bit of repeat, but the reduced pricing through the Solarize Chelsea Tunbridge program, a federal 30% tax credit. Now that's something that you'll obviously want to talk to your accountant about how that would work for your particular tax situation, because everybody's a little bit different there, but there is the opportunity to take that 30% federal tax credit. Green Mountain Power offers an additional 5.3 cents or 0.053 cents per watt of what's produced with your solar. And when we give you a cost estimate for your system, we'll include those numbers so you can see, okay, this is how much power my system's going to produce, and this is what that power is actually going to be worth, so you can make some good choices and things there. Once you get over a 15 kilowatt system, which is very rare on the residential side, but it does happen once in a while, GMP will actually drop that adder to 4.3 cents per, I think that should say per kilowatt, instead of 5.3 cents. And again, as Uncle Dan had said, WEC does have a different tariff and some different guidelines on how they factor the credits. So we'll have to talk to those WEC people and explain that a little more when the time comes. So here's just a little bit of some pricing examples of a 24 panel system, 6.12 kilowatts, producing about 7,300 kilowatt hours a year. Okay, so without Solarize, base system pricing $24,480, minus the federal tax credit of $73,44, brings the net cost to $17,136. Tier 1 Solarize pricing, $23,256 minus 30% federal tax credit, $69,77. Net cost of $16,279. And Tier 5, you can see once we get, if hopefully we do get to Tier 5, that price drops from $24,480 down to $21,726. And the net cost is now down at $15,208. So you can see there are some substantial savings here with this program. And you can see a quick calculation here at the bottom. Green Mountain Power, with the Green Mountain Power adder, you can expect this system to produce about $1,460 a year worth of credit, which then turns the system into a 10-year payback at Tier 5 pricing. Okay. Financing, again, this is kind of repeat from what Todd was saying earlier, but we do work with and encourage people to work with Vermont State Employees Credit Union, Mascoma Savings Bank, Admirals Bank is a larger national bank that does offer solar loans, even your own local bank, for some financing options for these types of systems. And with that, I am going to bring Dan back to wrap us up here.
So the site visit, again, that 728-3600 is the phone number to the Catamount office. We have operators standing by now. No, but they will be there from 8:30 till 5, and the way it will work is hopefully you'll call, we'll schedule. Catamount has a little more capacity, so we have a split with integrity, 2/3, 1/3. We'll take a couple calls, we'll give him a call. We'll take a couple, but that person who answers the phone will either schedule for you, or you will get a call back from integrity and they'll schedule a site visit. And during that phone call, there'll be the questions that I talked about. You know, where's the site? What's your utility? How much power do you use? So good idea to know at least how much money you spend every month. If you don't know how many kilowatt hours, at least like how much you write a check for every month would be helpful. And our commitment is to get back to folks within 48 hours. And so far, we've done a really good job with that. We'll do the site evaluation. It's nice for the site evaluation if the deciders can be there. So whoever's gonna say, yeah, we're gonna pull the trigger on this. So if you really want it and your spouse or partner might not, and you've got the checkbook, maybe you don't want them there for the site visit. Or other way around. It's really good for us if we can show up and talk with whoever is going to be making the decision. And most situations, if it's a couple, that's making sure that both people are home. Our goal is to give you a proposal right at the site visit. We've been doing this long enough, we have a good enough sense of what that's going to be. The easy ones are when you have a south-facing roof and we can tie in and we can do a proposal pretty quickly. Every once in a while, if there's big distances, you won't get the proposal right on site because we need to do electronic design to figure out what the wire size is, which helps us figure out what the cost is, and that's not always something that we want to do in the cab of the truck. But for probably 99% of the people, you're going to get a proposal right there. We're not, if you decide that you like that, then we'll turn it into a contract and get that back to you. We're not here to do high-pressure sales. We just want to make sure that we can get information and keep this program moving. This program expires the 30th of September. No problem. Plenty of time. Do not call for a site visit on the 29th. We've done this before, we know people like to wait. We don't have a problem, it's summer, no one's doing anything, right? You know, these volunteers are going to be beating the bushes. For this system to work, we need a little bit of momentum up front. Because if we can be showing that we're hitting our tiers, more people go, oh, I'm gonna get there. But you need to be committed to buy in at the top tier, tier 1. That needs to be economically reasonable for you. Don't sign up hoping you're gonna get to tier 5. Sign up knowing that you're gonna potentially pay tier 1 price, and then working with the volunteers to get the community to tier 5. That's kind of the goal. Again, we're going to work as hard as we can. We're right here. We'll be delivering stuff on, hand delivering, meeting you after work to get signatures, whatever we need to do to help grease this along. 50% initial deposit at the contract signing. We will submit the CPG, that's the Certificate of Public Good that the state says we need to have in order to put power back onto the grid. Upon that completion, we have 10 business days to hear back from the state whether we can or can't do the job. I've never, I don't think, have been turned down to do a job for a residential size. Once your CPG is approved, we will schedule. The roof jobs are going to get done earlier because there's no groundwork to do. But as they come in, that's when we try to start scheduling and procuring the equipment. So our goal is to get the job done. The installation, it's less than a week for 99% of our jobs. Same for you guys, right? So we don't really disrupt too much. We tend to work long days. We certainly will communicate with you if there's stuff going on, weddings, big parties, try to not be be setting up the same day that your daughter's getting married. We'll try to work with you there. The job's done. Second payment is collected based on the assumption that the community will reach tier 5. We'll provide a system, a training manual. The utility will provide the proper meter to start producing your own power. And there was a slide earlier. The utility will charge you for that meter. I think it's $110 right now, so that's a cost that's not included, just to be transparent. We'll get done, we'll follow up. Here's a stickler. If the Tier 5 pricing has not been achieved, an additional invoice or revised contract will be issued based on if we didn't hit that. So our goal is to not have to send rebates out. We'd rather charge you assuming we're going to get to Tier 5, and then if we don't, we're going to ask you to make up the difference that the community didn't get to. Yeah, again, because this is kicking off during our building season, as we sell them, we'll start building them. Most of our jobs, we assume, will be put in late summer, fall. Our goal is to get them done by 2015, by the end of the year. Again, if you sign up on September 29th and you've got a ground mount jobs take us longer. We need to do work with the different people about getting access into the ground and doing foundations. So sometimes that can be a hiccup. So if you know you got a ground site, call early. Just to let you know, we successfully won the Randolph, Braintree, Brookfield, Pomfret, Woodstock last round of Solarize, and we took 2 days off for the weather this winter. So we got guys that have good Yankee work ethics. So sign up, spread the word. My concern that I told the organizers is you got to keep this buzz going because everybody's rolling. You know, if you've got kids that are just going to be finishing school, you're going to want to make your vacation. You've got all the different stuff you do. Don't let this fall to the back burner. Strike. This is whether it was us who won it or Real Goods or whoever your provider would be, this is a great opportunity for folks to get a better cost, a little group buying, if you will. You just got handed to me, so I guess I'm supposed to speak about them. Yes, I would like a site visit. Fill this out. You've got them with your chair. Everyone has a blue one? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Boxes for them in the back.
Box in the back, a basket. And upcoming stuff is there's an open house June 17th at Philip and Susan's on 5 Hall Road, Chelsea. And then the solar open house, I will be on the 20th down at the Fitzgerald's home, which is, if you're heading north on 110, it's a house with a big solar array. 275 watt panel instead of a 280 if that happened to be an advertised panel.
Another question, is there enough experience now that you know of what this does to home values? Are there generalities like that?
Generalities is that it does actually increase your home value. And the couple I was talking to earlier, I said, wouldn't it be great to be trying to sell your home and be able to have had this up for 2 or 3 years and say, oh yeah, by the way, this is our electric bill for the last X number of months or whatever. I don't know what they're saying. Are they saying 12, 14%? I think Doc was saying as a value on your home, but I don't know who comes up with those numbers. I personally have it on my house, and I like having a $14, $18 electric bill every month, and sometimes zero.
Why is the group net metering not part of this?
Why is group net metering?
Yeah.
It depends. You can have a group net metering within your own group. So I'm going to pick on Mr. Howe. He has multiple buildings and maybe multiple meters. It's easy to do a group net metering within the same family, and that we would help support. Every round of Solarize that we've been involved, people have tried to do a group, and guess what? People are funny about money and land. So what's the group? Who's going to have it? How's it going to work? None of the groups were able to come together and make it work. So we just said it's not something that works well for us. It also puts us out of the tier. You know, if someone comes to me with a group, we're happy to work with them and help them create that. But we learned from the last few rounds that it was something we didn't want to push. Am I missing anything on that, Kevin? Was that?
Well, the issue I think is it takes longer to form a group generally. If you're talking about a big community group system, probably it's going to take longer than this 15-week start period to get it done. And as Dan said, if you did manage to put together 20 or 25 people and you were going to build a 100 or 150 kW system, because of that scale, you're going to get a lower installation price than what's shown here. It's really for single-family houses.
Does that make sense?
And is there an option to do that later?
Oh, there's always. I mean, to be quite frank, when this whole Solarize program came off, I was like, oh wow, this is going to be crazy. We would obviously do this with any community, any energy committee that comes to us and say, hey, we want to rally and do 15 jobs in this neighborhood. Of course I can give a better price if I'm doing 15 jobs in one area. What this does for us is this means we're driving to Chelsea and Tunbridge instead of Bennington or Craftsbury or Burlington. So we're staying local. We're also doing a bunch of sales, meaning when I order panels, if I can order 12 pallets instead of 2, I can pass that savings along. That's how it works anytime, anywhere, any industry. Or I can keep my savings and be more profitable. Part of this program is to make sure that I have a halfway decent bottom line so we can stay in business, but also pass savings on to you folks, and that's why we're doing it. As part of who we are as a business, who we are as a co-op. So yeah.
Yeah, a question about financing. You want 50% down at the time of signing the contract.
Correct.
But do the lenders require a signed contract before they finance?
Yes. Most of the lenders actually ask to see the contract. And again, I always say, please work with your own local credit union first. If not, Vermont State Employees Credit Union, we've had a lot of good luck with them. They understand us. They know our product. They know that we're reputable, that we're not fresh, just trying to figure out this stuff. But yeah, I've definitely had phone calls from them, just kind of confirming, you're working with this guy? Can we see the contract? So yeah. More questions?
Kay asked about property values. How do listeners feel about property values, and does it increase homeowners' taxes if you do projects in places?
I don't know how listeners feel. I think it will add property value. Taxes are not unless you get over, what's the new?
Well, there's two tax things going on at the state level. There's a power generation tax that systems over 50 kW are subject to. So the projects
50.
50.
Over 50 kW.
You don't have to worry about that. In terms of property value and local property taxes, my understanding is the state has provided guidance to the towns on how to value these, but they've left the decision locally to the towns to decide whether each individual town is going to reassess or assess the property value based on the presence of solar power systems. So I don't know what's happening in Chelsea and Tunbridge. I know that some towns in the states in Vermont have gone ahead and given their listers this guidance from the state, and they've gone around and tried to calculate how much value to add to the valuations based on the presence of solar, and other towns have said, no, we appreciate that people are doing this, and we're not going to value. So you might check it.
And to follow up on that, Kevin, the Tunbridge Energy Committee has asked that question of a current lister. We have a emeritus lister with us today, but I won't bother Ben. Yeah, currently the listers are counting solar installations here in Tunbridge as personal property. They are not adding it on to, you know, the cost on the grand list of your property. They do have that information from the state. At least for now, there's not a plan to change that. But I think you might want to follow up with your favorite lister. But that information came from Dan Rudell just in the last 2 weeks. So that's, I'm not sure what Chelsea's position is, but that's where Tunbridge is.
Chelsea's is the same. You're not currently taxed renewable energy. It may change, but no intention.
I would encourage you to go to town meetings and keep this the way it is. Solar should be considered a community good.
I just wanted to add, as somebody that just went through a recent last week solar installation through Catamount, I was contacted by the Tunbridge listers to fill out some information just so that they have it on record, not to make it part of the newest tax assessment. So at this point, that's the way they up at Tunbridge is handling it. They want the information, but they're not using it as part of an additional assessment on their property tax evaluation. And I also just wanted to say that I financed through Vermont State Employees Credit Union, and it was like a 2-week turnaround. Once you submitted all your information, they have a streamlined process that they put you through, so it's very quick and very efficient. So I found that very helpful as well.
And just one more thought on this collecting data. The state has asked the towns to collect data on solar installations. They're trying to figure out if they're meeting their energy plan for the state. And why they can't figure out that from the tax rebates, I'm not sure, but they have asked
because the state doesn't do tax rebates for solar anymore. So they don't,
that's why.
They don't track it like they used to. As of December 30th,
right.
That all went
So
away.
that's why they're asking. Yep.
More questions about the process, or?
I don't know if you want to answer anything, but my question are, what are the panels made of? Where are they made? Are they replaceable? Are they disposable? How much do they weigh? And what happens
Slow down.
Okay, but I just want to know about the panels, the manufacturer and the materials that are in them themselves and how much they weigh. And do you, when you install, do you punch through the building envelope to get those on, or is it just outside on the roof?
Yes.
Let's say if you're going to do a roof.
Yes, it depends. Sometimes. Depending on the roof structure, we will either penetrate the roof with modern flashing materials. If it's a standing seam roof that has been deemed put on well enough to mount right onto, we can clamp onto the seams. We look at any public building. We have a structural review. If we were to put some on the school, we would hire an independent structural engineer to confirm that it can handle it. The panel weight is 47 pounds per panel. It adds about 4 pounds per square foot to your roof load. The panels, as you will see in a site visit, the panels are made in Canadian Solar. Where do you think they're made? You're right. Canadian Solar is made in China. Solar World are made in America. Rena Solar are made in Taiwan, North Korea. Panels, unfortunately, panels made in this country are a premium charge. We do offer that, and of course we pass that cost on to the person. The thing we work with panels is, have they passed certain tests, and some of the tests is, are they rated for New England, meaning the frame? Can they hold up to the snow load? And of course, different panels come from different regions. A lot of panels, the cells, if you look at those squares, some of them will be made in China, and then the cells are sent to another country and manufactured there, and then from there to a third country. The frames are all aluminum. They are recyclable. Again, we're talking a 25-year warranty on all the panels. I've worked on panels that were put up in the 70s that are still working. so we don't really know how long these things last. I have a pretty good feeling with the panels that we work with, and all good questions. Did I miss any in there?
A couple follow-up. Have they been damaged? Do you ever replace panels from like natural things, like let's say birds falling on them or meteors, or like or is it just not,
No
that's not a
meteors.
factor?
I haven't had any meteor hits yet, but they're rated for 1-inch hail. We build and design everything to 110 mile an hour wind zone. That's where we live. The whole state of Vermont is considered 110 mile an hour wind zone. We pay attention to the snow, and so we build to a 70 pound per square foot snow zone. I believe this area might be 60. I have had people that have broken panels by trying to clean them with snow rakes. That's not covered under the warranty. Golf balls are not covered under the warranty. You know, operator stuff is not covered under the warranty, but I mean, I've got thousands and thousands of panels out, and the only ones I've ever seen broken have been owner-operator induced.
Also, are there solar panels that are just for hot water, so that the water circulates up there on the roof and they don't do any electricity, they just heat the water and then it comes down into your water?
Yes, and we don't do that anymore, and I'll tell you why. What happens in New England is you will have to spend a lot of money to put this solar hot water system up. And that's what you'll have backfeeding. And you will have too much hot water in the summertime, and you will have to create a way to dump that excess heat. So now let's think about that. You spend all this money to put this system up, and you're dumping energy to the outdoors just to dissipate this heat. Where you could put in a new electric hot water tank and create your hot water through the PV, and you never have to dump the heat because you send it back on the grid. So you build up your credit, and then it's going to use it as it's produced. A farm, a restaurant, someplace on that level. But even if you've got kids and you're looking at, well, we use a lot of hot water, hopefully they're going to grow up and leave the house. And these systems work for a long time, so you don't want to have a massive system unless you have massive hot water needs.
Yeah, Dan, more a comment based on when we had our installer interviews and stuff, and I think I saw you, we know that you guys do off-grid solar, and I just wanted to clarify, some folks may not be here today, but as we all go out and start to branch out and network with our neighbors in both Chelsea and Tunbridge, we may come across folks that are not going to get tied to the grid. They would still, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, they would have to negotiate their own sort of contract with Integrity or Catamount. But if they were to reach an agreement during this same time period, you guys would probably be willing to add whatever those kilowatts were
Correct.
To the total for the tier pricing.
Correct. Yes, and we in the other communities, we've done a couple of jobs that way where we did add that, and we gave those people a little better pricing, just try to, in the spirit of this.
Right, so just...
But it'll count towards the tier reduction. It's certainly, they're not going to get an off-grid system installed for $3.80 a watt.
No, with all the batteries and everything else. But so keep that in mind as you're talking with folks that may be off-grid and not tying into the general grid. The other thing is that those who are here today, or if you bump into other folks that don't have a good site, that are interested in group net metering, once again, outside of this program, but let the members of the core team that you saw identified earlier, let us know, because we can start to accumulate names so that if some sort of project like that came up later, we would have the people's names to go to.
More?
This is an insurance question. I don't know what you warrant against, sort of flying trees or anything like that. But is it advisable if you have solar to let your insurance company know that you don't have solar panels? Is that something that's an insurable?
Yes. We are not insured of acts of God. So if a tree falls on that, that would be a homeowner's claim. So it didn't make my house insurance go up, but they know I have it.
At one point, it was my understanding that the state of Vermont governed that incentive value that GMP and other companies had to pay back during net metering situations. Is that gone away? Is there still some oversight on that, or is it the kind of thing where 5 or 10 years down the road, GMP is going to decide they don't want to pay that money anymore?
Yes, that's a good question. The bonus that I think Amos mentioned in the slide, when you sign up and do your program, that's guaranteed for 10 years from the utility, from Green Mountain Power. At that point, we don't know what they're going to do, if they're going to like continue it or just do a one-to-one. But that's a 10-year commitment from them once we sign up.
That GMP has a more favorable system to ratepayers than Washington Electric, and you've avoided talking about Washington Electric, how that relates as a Washington Electric customer. But could you talk about that just a little bit?
I'll do my best. Washington Electric has a whole different tariff, and understandably, they're a smaller utility. They don't have the ability to absorb as much as Green Mountain Power is. In Washington Electric, we have to look on a case by case, because it literally varies from homeowner to homeowner on how much power you use. But we would work very carefully not to oversize your system. They allow you to net meter. They allow everything that the other ones do. They're just not giving you that credit, and you will have a production fee. If you're a Washington Electric customer, you should have got a mailing from them that laid this out, but it's fairly complicated to do. Standing up here, it's more of a one-off one, depending on what your electric use is. And we're happy to do that with everyone when we do a site visit, because it's, unfortunately, they're a smaller utility and they just can't absorb as much. And so what they're trying to make sure, with Green Mountain Power, the most you can make is zero, meaning you can zero out your bill. With Washington Electric, they want to make sure they at least have a small amount to help maintain the line fees.
So, little background on Washington Electric. Washington Electric already generates more than 100% of its power that it uses from sustainable energy sources, whereas Green Mountain Power is trying to build that number. So that's part of the incentive piece. The second piece for Washington Electric, it has about 5 times the amount of line per customer that's in the field. And if you net your out to zero, they're still maintaining their lines. They're trying to figure out how to pay for those. And so there is a meter charge that you never get rid of with Washington Electric, whereas Green Mountain Power, you can take it, you can actually get down to zero, but you never get to zero.
Yeah, it's an understandable difference. Unfortunately, it's just where we're bordering the boundary here. It's still a good deal in Washington Electric. You can still net meter, you can still get your bill significantly reduced. I think if you start penciling out the payback, it's going to be a lot longer there. I personally, my favorite payback answer when people ask me is, what's the payback on that truck you're driving? Doing this is more than just payback, and the cost of gasoline and all those other things is more than what meets the eye. So that's as far as I'll go politically.
Any more questions?
It's really tough to compete with ice cream.
I didn't have a question, but a comment. When I left the Randolph meeting for Randolph, Brookfield, and Braintree, there were many people scratching their heads and saying, this may be a good deal for me, but aren't my neighbors picking up the tab for it? And should I be taking it if it's costing my neighbors to do this? And one of the things about electric pricing is it's pretty sophisticated. It costs about 6 or 7 cents to buy electricity, and we usually buy it from far away, and it costs about 6 cents to ship it here. If you make electricity at your home, you avoid shipping costs. You don't have to send it in on wires, and we don't have to build new poles and wires for electricity that we don't have to buy from far away. And every time a net metering system goes in, it helps everybody else avoid having to pay for new poles and wires, as well as yourself. And another fact that many, even the Department of Public Service didn't advertise, is there's a tax in New England on every electric user to pay for the huge power lines that go throughout New England. And every state has a cost. Vermont's cost 12 years ago was to pay for 5% of all the big power lines going from state to state to state. 5%. And it's based on how much electricity Vermonters use. When you net meter, that electricity doesn't count towards the base electricity. Because of energy efficiency programs and net metering, Vermont's cost went from 5% of all the New England projects down to 3.5%. It doesn't seem like a lot, but that's hundreds of millions of dollars that all Vermont electric payers haven't had to pay. It tends to make our businesses slightly more competitive than they were 12 years ago. And if you look at the newspaper and see what's happening to electric rates in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, where they're going up at double-digit rates, and people will turn and say, well, why aren't they going up at Vermont at the same rate? Well, it's because people have net metered, and we've used energy efficiency and haven't built new poles and wires to get the same electric service. And we've been doing what the Yankees have been doing for years, is being a little more smart and a little more thrifty, and this program is part of that package.
I'd like to put in a thanks to our legislators, Mark and Sarah from Tunbridge, and I know both of them went to bat in the legislature and made sure that we got an energy bill through this year that was better than the energy bill that had been there before. And that's a great pleasure to see it headed the right direction. Thank you.
Well, please have some ice cream, and we're going to hang around, so if you have one-off questions or you...
Don't forget the electric cars.